Imagine you're 12 years old and you are a fan of a musical group, and you decide to start a newsletter which takes off, that becomes a relationship and builds a company. And to this day, you are working with literally the biggest names in the history of entertainment. That's Cassie Petrey's story, my guest on this episode of Unbeatable. You want to talk about names that everyone around the globe will recognize? She's worked with them, and we're going to talk about them on this episode of Unbeatable.
These stories of triumph over adversity will help you handle your toughest days in life and become unbeatable.
Thank you for listening to this episode. It wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for my friends at the Solomon Foundation. This is a group that helps you invest. And if you want to take a little bit of money and make an eternal impact at the same time that you're getting a great return on your investment, well, just go and check them out at thesolomonfoundation.org. Now here's my episode with Cassie Petrey and her company, CrowdSurf, on this episode of Unbeatable. Hey, Cassie, thanks for joining me on this episode of Unbeatable.
Hi, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
You have offices all over America. Where are you dialing in from right now?
Well, I don't technically have offices anymore. Oh, we only have an office in Nashville now, but I have people all over. We use WeWork now. So technically I have an office everywhere, but where we mostly have most of our team based out of now is New York area, Nashville, and Los Angeles.
So you use WeWork, which means you guys might need to be looking for another company pretty soon. Those folks have been struggling for a little bit.
I don't know. I mean, if they're struggling leads me to currently having a good deal right now, I'd feel good about it.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe you should buy a huge office complex at a discount, right?
Yeah, but I mean, the way that they work right now, it's like $150 a person to have access to all of their offices. So I think that's a really good solution for the moment.
Sweet deal right there.
It really is. It's for a business owner. You can't beat it. And for a city like LA where everyone lives all over and they're able to go to their closest office if they choose to, I think it's a really good situation.
Yeah. By the way, for the audience, this isn't a paid advertisement for WeWork, but if you're trying to afford office space in downtown Los Angeles or in Manhattan or even in Music City, USA, it's going to be crazy expensive. So no wonder you guys would use WeWork or somebody like them.
Yeah, it's a great solution.
Can we go back in time a little bit? Let's talk about this 12-year-old girl that's a super fan of the boy band and how your life took off like a rocket, and it really hasn't ever started to come back down yet. So what caused you to create a newsletter at 12 years old about the Backstreet Boys?
It was combining two loves that I had at that time in my life. I loved the Backstreet Boys. They were the first group, artist, music entity that I ever really, really loved. And at that time, the internet was becoming popular, like the AOL version of the internet where you would, have dial up and get online. And I was having a lot of fun with that. I actually bought a book and learned how to HTML code and was building little websites and building newsletters like the one you mentioned.
You were writing code as a 12-year-old girl when the internet was still brand new and shiny?
Yeah, I thought it was really fun. And I wouldn't say I'm an expert coder now by any means, but I still use a lot of that base knowledge that I learned then now, especially when we get in a pickle in website design. And I remember one time our website designer, our main one, was designing a site and his dad died in the middle of a launch. And I was like, guess I'm getting in there and figuring it out.
Guess I'm going to design a website. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's been really, really useful to I wouldn't say it's my forte, but to understand how it works still comes in handy today. But it was really a way of combining those two interests that I had. And it was really, really fun. I had a really good time designing it and good time sending it out and good time building a community and meeting other people who had similar interests to me.
I don't know if I should use this term because you're still pretty young and you still are, and you're very, very influential in the entertainment industry. But if you're talking AOL back in the day or MySpace back in the day, you're one of the OGs, the original gangstas of social media and the whole internet entertainment marketing industry. If you've been around doing that since you were a 12-year-old girl.
Yeah, I feel really fortunate with my timing. I openly call myself a social media dinosaur all the time. I've literally been there since.
That phrase is a contradiction in terms, a dinosaur in social media.
Yeah, I love dinosaurs. I like reptiles too. That's just my thing. So social media dinosaur
Okay.
I think it's like the utmost compliment when it comes to my taste. But I call myself a social media dinosaur all the time. I've been doing it since it's existed, and I actually had to like testify that in court one time. So I feel really good. Like, yes, I was an expert witness and when you're an expert witness, you have to prove that you're an expert.
You have to prove you know what you're talking about.
Yes.
You have to prove you're an expert,
Yeah.
right?
So that was one of the things I talked about in there. And so I really did research to like confirm I was one of the first people in this space, and I truly was. So I've been doing it since it existed, for sure.
I am impressed because you are significantly younger than me. I remember all of the stuff that we're talking about right now, and the fact that you have been around and been an expert in it since it started at such a young age is really, really impressive. We're going to talk in just a few minutes about your company and about we're going to blow people's minds with the people that you have worked with, the people that you've represented. That's what we're going to do for most of this episode. But before we do that, let's talk about Jade. How did you two connect? When did you two first meet?
Jade and I met in college. She's
right.
from Virginia. I'm from Kentucky. And we both went to Middle Tennessee State University, which is outside of
school.
Nashville.
Yep, great school.
Especially for what we do.
Sure.
And that's what, we both went there for the music business program. And we lived in the same dorm hall on the same floor. And at the time, one of my first jobs was being a Warner Music College rep. So I would go to CD stores and like set up displays and run concert ticket giveaways with like frat houses and stuff. That was my campus job.
You were everyone's best friend in college is what you were saying. Everybody wanted to get to know Cassie.
I don't know. I kind of flew under the radar because I was also super competitive, and in the way the school was set up, it's super competitive because everyone can enroll in the music business program, but they only take a certain level or number of people once you get to junior, senior level. It's called candidacy. So everyone was actually super competitive. But Jade and I think initially were kind of competitive, one for that reason. And two, she thought I would go make business calls in front of her dorm hall because she lived at the end of the hall, and I would go there to get reception on my phone. And she thought I was doing it to like
just showing off, right? Yeah.
Yes, but that was definitely not the case, and it's really funny to think about it now. But we eventually became friends.
Well, most people don't know of the school, Middle Tennessee State University, but MTSU has a huge program that is very influential in the entertainment industry just because of this close connection to the music industry in Nashville. When did you and Jade decide, hey, you want to go into business together? Do you want to try to make a go of this thing together? What was the original conversation like? Was this the plan from the start for both of you?
Definitely not. I remember when we were both together the first time we were like kind of browsing MySpace because it came out our first year of college.
She just said browsing MySpace while she was in college.
Yeah, it was awesome. I miss it. And we were looking at MySpace, and I remember I turned to her and I said, I'm going to run MySpace pages for a living. Like, that's totally a job. And I don't know if she believed me or not at the time, but I actually took that concept to my boss when I was a Warner Music College rep, and I said, I want to do this. And she's like, I don't really get it, but I'll connect you with, I'll connect you with somebody in Nashville that works in digital and let you talk about it. And I'll also let you pick one of the artists that are our priorities, and you can manage their MySpace page. So I did both of those things. Wow. And that eventually led to, I was a temp at Warner. I led to a temp job at Warner working in the digital department. It was just me and the head of digital, and that was the digital department at the time. and I temped for 3 years, but it became too much work for me. So I actually asked, can we hire Jade as well? So Jade and I were both working at Warner handling MySpace pages and a bunch of other
Yeah.
things like
Yeah.
email lists. We were managing ringtones, which is funny to think about now.
Oh, ringtones. Anybody remember ringtones? Yes. I remember when people used to pay money for a hit song to be their ringtone. Yes.
Yeah,
Wow.
so we
That's a
were
blast
that
from
was
the
part of
past.
yeah, so we were doing that. We were and then ringbacks where you hear a song when you call somebody. We were working on all that kind of stuff. And we really liked what we were doing actually. We felt fortunate. We felt like we had kind of found a niche within the music business. And the problem was there wasn't a place to grow within that niche at that point. There
Yeah.
wasn't social media manager jobs. There are other, they're like, you can be the manager of our relationship with MSN and AOL or Yahoo, but we don't have jobs where they pay more doing
Right.
like what you're doing right now. So that's when we decided to start our own company. Not really because we ever had the dream of starting our own company, but because there wasn't really a way to grow. And I think we were ready to grow. There wasn't a way to grow
Yeah.
without doing it. The job we wanted didn't exist. So we made it.
Yeah, I want to just explain to the audience when you're working at Warner at this point, you're working for one of the biggest record labels in the world and some of the biggest artists in history. And you're also building digital and social at a time that it didn't exist. So you're pioneering new ground in the music industry at the same time, which takes a lot of courage and it takes a lot of skill, to be honest. When you and Jade got together and said, hey, let's start a company, what was the original plan for Crowdsource?
We didn't really have much of a plan. I mean, there's
Hey,
like,
nice.
we never made, we didn't raise funding. So like, it's not like we had to make a business plan to be able to do it. We didn't have to do like a lot of the things you learn because we actually, entrepreneurship was our minor, and it wasn't because we wanted to start a business. It's because it had the easiest course load in our opinion. That's why we did it.
Yeah.
But it ended up really working out because we got some classes in terms of like, how do you register an LLC and how do you do, what sort of taxes do you have to pay and where do you have to register a business if you start one? So we definitely made some errors on that, but we like kind of got some things right based upon some of the like baseline things we worked in class or learned in class and worked on in class. So, we didn't really, we just wanted to continue doing what we did, but wanted a little more freedom and wanted to be able to have the opportunity to make more money and not be a temp anymore. That was really the only motivation, to be honest.
Is this temporary? Being a temp at Warner isn't for me. So let's go figure out a way to make more money and not have to do this for the rest of our life.
Yeah. And listen, I was a temp for 3 years. That's a really long time to be a temp. And
sure.
it's not because they didn't offer me another job. I just didn't like the task of the job that I was offered. And the only way I could grow and keep the job that I liked, but kind of go to the next level was to
start your own company.
It was to be a business owner.
Anybody who's watching this episode right now on YouTube can see the platinum records on the wall behind you. Man, you have worked with the biggest names, literally the biggest names in music. When did you start to get a couple of big accounts early on in Crowdsource? And then what I want to do is just let people hear some of the people that you've worked with. But I want you to be able to tell them a little bit about the people that you've worked with, the companies that you've worked with, because the lineup is the who's who of entertainment and really even technology, the technology industry. So some of the early clients that came to you when you and Jade started Crowdsource, tell us about them.
So our original set of clients was very kind of derived from what we had been working on in Nashville. So we were working on a lot of country music, and one of our first big clients was actually just Capitol Nashville as a whole, because they were on a hiring freeze and weren't allowed to hire anybody internally. So they decided to use us, and their roster was incredible. We were working on like Keith Urban, Luke Bryan, the launch of Lady Antebellum. I remember there was one point where they were thinking about dropping Eric Church, and then the record we worked on did really well. And I think the digital marketing campaign was a part of that.
Yeah.
We that's just a handful of the amazing artists we got to work on. And then the first big pop artist that we got to work on came the next year, and we still work with her today. It's might have heard of her. Her name is Britney Spears, but started working on that project at that point. And that project actually came from, we were doing Nashville Star, which is kind of like a country version of American Idol. And a digital consultant on that project came to us and said, hey, do you know anybody like you in LA? Because there weren't people like us yet. Do you know anybody like you in Los Angeles that would want to work on Britney Spears? And I said, I don't live in Los Angeles, but I would move there to work on Britney Spears. And I ended up not having to move to LA, but we still got to work on her project. And I'm grateful that we still get to work with her today. But that was, a dream come true, because that was the genre I grew up in. And it really, I had big names in country music and I had built my skill set from that, but to be able to work with an artist that I loved my whole life, that was a really, really awesome opportunity.
Yeah. It just occurred to me, you're living in Nashville, Britney Spears' career is taken off and she's in LA. And so you're getting asked to move to LA to work with her, which shows you how early this was in the digital space, because at this point, it sounds like people haven't made the connection. Wait, you can do this from halfway across the country. I don't actually have to live next to her to be able to represent her. And it just occurred to me, it took us a while. It took people a while to figure that one out, especially in the digital arena, right?
Yeah. And at this point, you have to remember, like, I was doing social media before there were like
social media channels, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Before there was, like smartphones or beyond a BlackBerry. When I started my career as a BlackBerry, and actually watching the evolution of video and photo come onto phone, we would get sent like these Nokia phones that would have like video on them, and that was revolutionary, mind-blowing at the time. Yeah. So when you were doing, if you wanted to be mobile in social media at the time, you would have to carry a heavy laptop, which I did. I had a giant Sony Vaio, and I would have a hotspot so that if I was at a restaurant and I needed to make an update to a website, I was able to do that in a timely manner. But that's the only way you could operate, because you couldn't do that kind of stuff from your phone. You couldn't get on a website and post something. You couldn't click send on an email blast from a phone. You couldn't post something on Twitter from a phone in an easy way at that point. There wasn't the app yet. So it's changed a lot. So I do understand why somebody would want somebody more localized, simply for that reason alone. We didn't have iPhones the way we do now, so you can't communicate the same way.
There are 18, 19, 20-year-old people listening to this broadcast, and you are blowing their minds right now talking about carting around a big laptop with a mobile hotspot so that you could update a MySpace page way back in the day, before we have the instant communications that we all have access to, literally all over the world, all over the globe. Man, this industry has changed a lot since you helped launch it way back in the day.
Yeah, definitely. I'm grateful. A lot of people are like, oh, I hate the phone because I'm chained to it. And I'm like, I love the phone because I don't have to carry a laptop with me anymore.
You don't have to carry a laptop and a little brick next to it to connect to the internet.
Yeah, and pray that like it works. And that thing was slow. It was not fast like we have now. So yeah. I'm like grateful for the phone every day of my life, because I remember what it was like working in the field I worked in without it.
Okay, so you're a 12-year-old super fan of Backstreet Boys. You're representing some of the biggest names in country music. Then Britney Spears pops up, but you get a chance to work on some legacy archives with maybe one of the biggest names in music history, Frank Sinatra. What about some of the other massive music artists that you and Jade have been able to work with? Can you describe some of them for the audience?
Yeah, I mean, at any time at this point, our company has over 100 different projects we're working on. So
right now you have 100 projects that you're working on.
I mean, I don't personally work on all of them. I have a team of 50.
I'm saying your company does.
Yeah, but always. So we're really lucky. We have some, like, they call it legacy artists. So like you said, Frank Sinatra earlier, but getting to work on projects like Marvin Gaye, Temptations, like John Fogerty.
Wow.
Yeah, Iron Maiden. like all kinds of genres within
Yeah.
the
Wow.
legacy genre. All that's pretty cool. And then we work on a lot of artists that are big from, I call it the TRL era when I'm growing up, but like, Backstreet Boys.
Yeah.
We work with Pink and a lot of other great artists in that time frame. And then a lot of amazing artists, that are currently releasing hits today, like Camila Cabello, for example. So we
Yeah.
really run the gamut, and a lot of people who are, kind of the TikTok generation, or of, that, I think that there's a TRL era now. I think that we'll refer to this one day as like the TikTok era, but there's a lot of artists that are, have come out of that and that are,
Yeah.
currently building their career, and we get to work with them too. So I'm grateful for the vast gamut. I think it makes working at CrowdSurf really interesting, and I'm grateful for it.
Tell me that you had the exact same person working on Iron Maiden, Frank Sinatra, and Marvin Gaye all at the same time, because that would be mind blowing if you had one person doing all three of those very different styles at the same time.
I mean, I guess there probably are a couple people that are across all of them. I wouldn't call them like the day-to-day people, but I think somebody could very easily. Like, you would look at some people's roster and you're like, wow, that's all over the place.
That's all over the map right there. Yeah.
Some people like that though. And then some people like to be super specialized. Like, there's one team member I have that's super specialized in like pop music of today.
Uh-huh.
And then I have somebody who's really specialized in, I would say, like alternative music. There's a lot of different people and types of people that work for us, and they end up liking different things. And sometimes your personal music taste isn't necessarily the type of project that you end up working on.
Sure.
Or working on, or the type of project that you like working on.
Yeah.
Like, some genres are really fun to enjoy, but they're just may not be your cup of tea in terms of working with them. They all have their quirks, and it's interesting to watch some younger people come in and think they want to work on one type of project, but then they realize, oh no, I actually really like comedy, and I didn't think that would be my thing, or whatever. It's fascinating for sure.
How close does your team get to chance to get to the people that they represent? How much interaction in general?
It's pretty frequent at this point, but that's changed a lot over the years. At the beginning, not very often. You would maybe meet them in person, for like a kickoff meeting, when when they come to town for a show, that sort of thing. But now, I would say with a majority of our artists, we are communicating with them directly.
Yeah,
you have to. It's 15
just because
years
of
ago.
the speed of the speed of the social media campaign.
It's not even the speed. It's just that they care more about it being personally involved now. 10 years ago, it wasn't viewed as a necessity necessarily to be involved the way that you have to now. So there's just no way to, people know if you're not in your account now. So we have to be talking to them directly.
Yeah.
And because they're more involved, they have a lot more questions themselves now, versus before you would do a lot of communication via management. But now, since they're involved, they'll be like, hey, why is this glitching? Or how do you do this? How do you do this new feature on Carousel, or whatever? But we have to have a lot more direct communication now. And I think that's great. It's crazy to think that that's where it's gone, because I remember at the beginning, I would, beg for more communication or content directly from the artist. And now sometimes I'm like, okay, stop sending me stuff.
Stop emailing me. Stop texting me.
Yeah. So it's cool to see how it's evolved.
Well, I ask you this question because I had a friend just a few months ago made a statement. I really had to think about it, but I was like, man, that statement seems so true. He said, do yourself a favor, never meet personally your heroes, those sports stars, entertainers, the people that you really look up to, because for the most part, they're going to let you down. And I was like, that's a really sad statement, but my guess is there's a lot of truth to that statement. I got to wonder sometimes in your team, especially if they really love this artist growing up and now they get a chance to work with that artist, what is it like to work with somebody that you've really looked up to And I'm talking, the good and the bad that goes along with working with somebody that closely, with a person that you really look up to that much.
So I was actually really scared about working with the Backstreet Boys for that reason, because I didn't want it to taint my childhood, and I probably could have aggressively pursued that project earlier on in our career, but I was worried. I didn't,
Yeah.
I'd heard good things about them, but I didn't want,
You didn't
I
want to
know
get your
everything
heart,
about.
you didn't want to get your heart crushed, right?
Yeah, basically. And I think at some point I had a really good kind of, I think, sort of last quote unquote fan experience. And I was like, okay, I'm ready to do it now. Like, I'm ready to close this chapter and to try this with the Backstreet Boys. And I mean, I would say when it comes to them, if anything, they're amazing. And it's made me think even more highly of them, which
Wow.
I
All right.
don't think is
Way to go,
possible.
Backstreet Boys.
They're incredible. They've been through a lot, and I think because maybe they've been through a lot, they've stayed pretty humble. They've had some pretty rough things happen in their career, and have been financially taken advantage of, and
Yeah.
a whole
Yeah.
other slew of things. And the fact that they're still doing this and they're still good at it and they still like each other it's cool. And they've always been kind to me, and I have seen my background as a fan as a strength versus something to fear, and
Yeah.
I really respect them for that. I think they actually really enjoy that, like, I can talk to them about anything that's ever happened to them, or know the old references. Like, they actually enjoy that. But I for some reason, some people had put in my head that would be quote unquote freak them out. So I was a little hesitant about that at first, but then I really, I was like, maybe it's a strength, and they really saw it as a strength. So that was
Yeah.
a really good experience. But I will say there are downsides of working with artists. Like, there's been I wouldn't say they were my idols, but there's been some sour experiences with
Yeah.
artists, whether it's their fault or somebody on their
Sure.
team. And then when you like hear their song at the grocery store, like, it sucks that that's a random trigger for you that I think most
Yeah.
people wouldn't have. Like,
Right.
oh, I didn't want to think about this person or this person on their team right now. So that part of it can suck, is that sometimes an artist, it irritates you, whether you're currently working with them or already have, and sometimes you feel like you can't get away from it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that part of it is kind of a downer. But I will say everyone that I liked I feel like I'm really able to have empathy for the person that an artist is, but also like be a fan of who they are on stage. It's so different sometimes. I mean, in most cases. And I feel like I'm able, I don't know, I feel like anybody I work with that I loved as a child, they're not able to take that away from me, because I don't, they're two separate entities in my
Yeah.
head, to be honest.
I wanted people to hear that from you, because I don't think the average listener understands kind of all of the pressure that goes along with what you do for artists, but also the expectations on them. I am far from, and hope I never am considered famous. But I've had more than a couple of people who have sent me a message and then they got mad and were furious that I didn't respond 24 hours before, after I got this message. And they basically replied, well, you're obviously a jerk and too busy for me because you didn't respond to my email or my message that I sent on your website yesterday. And I'm getting to it. I'm getting around to it. I just haven't got to it yet. And then it occurred to me, like, wow, I am far from famous. I can't imagine what goes on for the biggest stars out there. And you have a responsibility of, helping them. And in the middle of it, you can sometimes get your heart hurt a little bit too.
Yeah, like you said, I don't envy the job of a famous person. It's really, really hard. It's to have to, like, think about how people are going to react to everything you do, and your financial success being attached to that in a particular way. It's really mentally challenging. Like, if
Yeah.
somebody doesn't like me, I might not make as much money as I used to. I
Right.
might have to lay off my staff if this song that I love doesn't do well,
Right.
and it depends on what somebody else thinks about me. It's really challenging, and then social media opens up a whole nother can of worms
Oh man,
in
sure. Yeah. Anybody
regards
says
to
something about you on social media, it catches some wind, and all of a sudden that's what everybody in the world thinks about you, even if it isn't true.
yeah, it can be really hard. Like, you really have to watch those comments, or there could be, or 99% of the comments could be the same sentiment and be really positive about something, but one person can just like knock you down.
Right.
And I really, and you can tell them all day long, like, don't let it get you down. Look at the 99 positive, but I know it's not that easy.
Yeah.
I get it. It's so I don't envy that. It's artists are really mentally strong. They have to be. And the only reason I think they go through all the hard parts of all this is because they literally they they would not be happy doing anything else besides making
Yeah.
music.
Sure.
They like that. That's the only reason you do this job,
That's why you would
because you
put up with the
can't do anything
pressure that
else.
fans put on you. Yeah.
Yeah,
Sure.
and like and most fans, I wouldn't, even if somebody like, there's even pressure if, let's say, your fan base is 100% nice, that's still pressure. You still
Oh
feel
yeah.
pressure to keep those people happy because you're so grateful for them being nice to you
Right.
that you don't want to let them down. So it's a lot. I
Sure.
it's, you have to be really, really. It's not for the not mentally strong. That's for sure.
Cassie, I'll share this with you. I'll tell you a little secret, and maybe nobody that's listening will hear, but COVID was great for me because I was able to put a ball cap on and wear a mask and walk around and not get recognized. And then I went home one day after leaving the store and I told my family, okay, you guys will never guess what happened to me. I'm standing in the checkout line. The person in front of me, I'm wearing a mask, got a ball cap on, and the person in front of me looks behind them once, twice, three times. And then they turn around and they're like, are you Jeff Struker? And I have a mask on and a ball cap. And I'm like, how on earth did you possibly recognize me with the mask on? But I wanted to be kind. I wanted to be nice to this guy. I just came home and told my family, okay, that's a first for me. They even recognized me with a mask and a ball cap on. And I am far from famous. So I really, really, my heart goes out to the people that have this immense pressure on them. And as you said, pressure from fans that are negative, but pressure from fans that are really, really positive, but you still get pressure all over the place.
Yeah, you feel a sense of responsibility to
Yeah.
those people.
Um, I want to turn a corner in just a second, but this is the perfect time to ask you a few questions. These are not my questions, but I know that there's somebody who's listening right now. There's a guy who's listening and he says, okay, I want to make a viral video on YouTube. Cassie, tell me how to do that. Or there's a lady listening that says, I want to become the next Taylor Swift. Cassie, what's the secret recipe to become the next Taylor Swift? Or how do I have a viral video on YouTube? But they have no content, no talent. Just how do I do this using pure marketing to get there?
So marketing helps people reach their goals, but marketing can't be the goal. It's and what I mean by that is you
I
have
was
to
going to
know.
say, I think you need to say that one more time, just because I'm afraid there are people that believe marketing will answer every problem that you'll ever run into. So can you say that statement again?
Yes, you need. I don't know if I can say it again the way I said it, but
Oh, it was brilliant. If you could just say it again
marketing.
the same way. Yeah.
Okay, marketing helps you reach your goals, but marketing shouldn't be your goal. So what I mean by that is you need to know why you're doing something outside of social media. Pretend it's the 1970s and social media doesn't exist. Why do you want to be the next Taylor Swift? Why do you want people to see your video? You need to know why you want to do that. And I hope always the reason is outside of attention for yourself. If you want a video to go viral, it's because you feel like people would have fun watching it, or they would relate to it, or they would learn something from it. If you want to be the next Taylor Swift, it should be because you think you're going to make people feel less alone by sharing your experience, or you feel like there's a underrepresented group of people and you being an artist would bring more light to those people. But you have to have a reason bigger than attention to get attention.
That
You,
is
and
a
some
very good statement.
And you can accomplish those things one off short term, but I don't think you would ever get to the level of like Taylor Swift if your reason was solely like just wanting attention alone and
Yeah.
wanting to be like somebody that you like. That's just not viable.
That was really well said. And I wish more people who, by the way, if I understand the research correctly, right now, the number one aspiration for students in school in America, the number one ideal job for them is to be a social media influencer. I just want attention. I want lots and lots of attention, and I want to make money getting attention for the rest of my life. And what you said is very well put. There has to be something more than just getting attention that is driving the attention that you want to get, or else it's just going to be a flash and in a pan, if that at all.
Yeah, even think about, I think a lot of people might feel like that thought derives from maybe something like the Kardashians. But even the Kardashians have evolved, their
Very
business.
savvy businesswomen.
Yeah,
Holy
I mean,
smokes.
they've created amazing businesses. They produce a really entertaining show. Like, as much as people want to knock them for being this sort of influencer who doesn't do anything, they do a lot. And I think that they have taken their platform and have ended up doing a lot of good. I love a lot of the brands that they've launched, and I think the show is fun to watch with people, and it also tackles some more heavy emotional moments. And I don't know. I think that they, again, it may be I don't know why they started doing what they did, but I think that they evolved into having some really like nice offerings actually, and doing things for good reasons in a
Yeah.
lot of cases.
I've never seen an episode of the Kardashians, don't plan to, but I cannot walk through an airport in America without seeing some of the products that they've launched, which tells me, holy smokes, these ladies are very, very savvy business ladies.
Yeah, and like, I think about Good American, and that's one of the brands Chloe's involved in, and it really filled a hole in the market, and I loved how every product is like size inclusive, and it's just
Mhm.
simple and but well made, but at a fair price. Like it I don't know, it was done correctly, and it solved a problem for a lot of people. So I appreciate that.
Well, Cassie, you haven't just represented some of the biggest names in the entertainment industry. You yourself are a who's who in almost all of the lists. When before you were 30 years old, you were on all of the list of this is one of the 30 most influential people 30 years old and younger around the world. But you've also had a chance to work with some of the biggest names in tech and in entertainment, like Disney and Universal, like Google or Apple. Man, you have to be pretty versatile to be able to represent legacy artists like Frank Sinatra and to be able to work for Apple or Disney at the same time. What was that like when you started, when your when crowdsources industry or your businesses, the businesses that you represented started to get very diverse?
Yeah, and so businesses like that are so big that when we work with somebody like Disney, we're representing like a very niche part of them. So on Disney, we do a lot of work on their music properties. So
Uh-huh.
helping populate social media for things like Hollywood Records or like Disney Music. And when we were working with Apple, they have on air talent for Apple Music, so we were actually doing some advising and coaching on how those that talent can better market their shows and themselves on social media. And then when we've done work with like Google and YouTube, it's been helping them run various programs that they execute that are music specific. So
Yeah.
it's it's kind of like our background evolved into other services that we maybe didn't even think that we could do, but when somebody asked us we could do it, we're like, yeah, actually we have the experience and infrastructure to really execute on something like that. So it's been cool to be approached by companies at that level,
Yeah.
because as a 20-year-old, I would have never known, how do you go pitch Disney? I'd be like, I don't know. So to actually be approached and get the opportunity to work with organizations at that level, it's been really awesome.
If you're driving and you just missed what she said, I'm going to say it again. This firm this woman is so talented that Disney, Apple, YouTube come to her with a problem, with a project instead of her going to them, which just tells the world how talented your team is. At the same time, though, you've been able to personally, your team has been able to be in the room with some of the biggest and the brightest thought leaders in the world. So can you talk about one or two of those experiences?
Oh, biggest thought leaders. I mean, I don't know if this is going to be what people think I'm going to go to, but I'll never forget my pitch meeting with Steven Tyler. Like meeting
the
him.
front man from the band Aerosmith. Okay.
Yes. And it just being like, it didn't feel like real life to like sit in an office with that man and, try to, sell him on what we do. And we did end up working with him for a long time and still pick up random projects and work with him from time to time. But just, I think any experience with him just is always been larger than life and felt like I was living in,
You have to pinch yourself a little bit, right?
Yeah. I remember one time I took him to, I did a San Francisco day with him. So we went down to Facebook and toured the campus, and then we went up to Twitter after. And I remember after Twitter, we went down to, he wanted to go get some clam chowder, like down, by the water.
Sure.
So we drove down there, and I remember he rolled down the window, and we were in a van. I was sitting next to him, and he rolled down the window, and he just started like saying hi and like yelling at people. And you would see people the reaction was hilarious, because you would see somebody first be like, "Why are you yelling at me?" And then be like, "Oh my God, is that Steven Tyler?" Like everyone recognizes him.
Tell me you did carpool karaoke with Steven Tyler while you were getting a bowl of clam chowder in San Francisco. That would be epic.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to ever sing in front of Steven Tyler, Jesus. But I did, film some content that it was really fun. So
That's cool.
That was pretty cool. And I think some of the people that I've been the most nervous to be around are songwriters, actually, because I know the credits of all the songs. So when I met Max Martin, who's like, he's one of he's written like so many hit songs between, when I started loving music when I was 12 to still writing hit songs today with like Ariana Grande and Taylor Swift. He's just a pop music genius. And I would say if anybody's going to kind of make me be starstruck and not be able to say something, it's somebody like him.
That's cool. Well, I'm going to wrap this thing up in just a second, but man, your company is, like I said, it took off like a rocket. It really hasn't come down yet. What are you excited about in the future? The projects that you're working on, or the stuff that you see around the corner for the whole industry? What are some things that you think the audience would love to hear about that's coming down the pipe?
So in terms of what I'm, working on now and how I want to evolve, I just always want to help artists more. We started off running MySpace pages, and we've evolved over the years to having a variety of different services. And that's just because I saw problems that artists have, and I want to figure out how to help solve those problems. So I look forward to continuing to evolve and solve those problems for them. I feel like my goal here on earth is to help artists in any way that I can. I feel like artists have a really hard job, but I also feel like they're really important to our society, and I want to do everything I can to help make their life a little bit easier so that they can continue giving us art that we love and need. I think it's really important. So that's always the core of my goal, that services may evolve, but that's always where my heart is. And in terms of social media, I think that what's next is, I think whatever helps people find cool things to do in real life, that's going to be what wins next. I don't think it exists yet, but I'm ready for something to help us be more entertained in real life and connect in real life. And I think whatever platform evolves to have tools to help us do that better is going to be important in the future.
Yeah. So Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, if you're listening to this episode, and I'm sure you are right now, she's just given you the secret to what your platform needs to be able to do for us next.
Exactly.
Yeah. Hey, thank you. By the way, you have a very busy schedule. We've had to reschedule this a couple of times just because of how busy you are. But thanks for taking a few minutes
Sorry.
out of your Nah, it's all good. Thanks for taking a few minutes out of your time to be on this episode of Unbeatable with me. Cassie's career took off from 12 years old, and it has really never slowed down. Now, maybe you thought as you were listening to this episode that she's just had it made the whole way, but everybody has some ups and downs in life. And perhaps one of the reasons why she and Jade have been so successful in their company is because she knows exactly what her goal in life is. In fact, she said it at the end of the episode. Her goal in life is to help artists who are struggling with something about their career. And I hope that you have identified exactly what your goal in life is, and you're chasing after it just as hard as Cassie is chasing after her goal in life. I also hope you've heard a name or two in this episode that's going to cause you to go out and to look more at CrowdSurf, or maybe even check out Cassie's Instagram account. That's just simply Cassie Petrey on Instagram. I want to thank you, as always, for listening. Thank you for tuning in. And we have some pretty amazing fans that stay connected with us on social media. We're on all of the social media platforms because, as you just heard from Cassie, it's really not an option anymore. But if you haven't found us on social media, why don't you go ahead and search for us at Unbeatable Podcast? That's where you'll find us. You're going to also find some pretty amazing people out there, like our fan of the week for this week. His name is Matt Isley. And Matt, I just want to tell you, you're awesome. Thank you for how connected you stay with us on social media. Thank you for how well you stay involved and be part of the Unbeatable Army. The Unbeatable Army is a group of guys and gals that are connected, and I send them content all week long, emails delivered directly to their inbox. And if you want to be part of this group, it's totally free. Just my way of encouraging you throughout the week. So if you want to become part of the Unbeatable Army, just simply go over to unbeatablearmy.com. Thanks for tuning in this week and listening to Cassie talk about some of the incredible people that she's worked with. I'll see you right back here with a new guest and a great story next week. God bless.